Now, look, Jerry, tell us just a little bit about your work in mental health wards and prisons, and also why you began to suspect the voices that schizophrenics heard weren't the result of mere hallucinations.
Well, I've worked in virtually every major mental health center that the United States has to offer. I mean, I've worked in one of the biggest psychiatric state hospitals on the planet. There were close to 10,000 patients there when I got there. I've worked in mental health centers. I've worked in private psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in county psychiatric hospitals. I've worked in the last 10 years, I spent working in emergency rooms doing psych crisis. I spent 10 years working with psychotic prisoners, criminally insane prisoners, that's where I got the most research done. And the last 10 years, I spent doing psych crisis in emergency rooms in all the major hospitals around Tucson. And you know, like everybody else coming out of graduate school, they had brainwashed me into believing that schizophrenics were having hallucinations. You know, that they were hearing voices. Those voices were hallucinations. So when you think of hallucinations, you go, well, they're all over the place. You know, they just don't make any sense. You know? So I was thinking they were like, you know, word salad. You know, they wouldn't make any sense. But that's not what I saw when I got onto the front lines. I saw schizophrenics carrying on coherent conversations with something or someone I couldn't see. And it wasn't word salad. They were arguing with whatever these things were. They were carrying on conversations with them. So it was like listening to one side of a telephone conversation. You know, you could hear what the person was saying, but you couldn't hear what was coming back. Right? So I found that interesting. And I was, you know, I thought I was brainwashed like everybody else. I thought they were hallucinations. And they taught us also that those hallucinations were because of a biochemical imbalance in the patient's brain.
Yeah.
Okay? So here I am working in this big hospital, you know, shoulder to shoulder with psychiatrists, and I noticed something pretty strange. I mean, if these voices are hallucinations or due to a biochemical imbalance, then it would seem to reason that these people would need some kind of baseline. What chemicals were out of balance and by how much?
Yeah.
You know, there should be some kind of test to measure that. You know, there wasn't. You know, I watched time after time after time these psychiatrists just pull a diagnosis out of thin air, say, you're schizophrenic, and just prescribe drugs based on that.
Just take
like a subjective opinion. There was no test. There was no X-ray. There was no EEG. There was no blood test. There was no other kind of test. They would just pull it out of the hat and go, oh, you're schizophrenic, and they write that down as a label. And I'd ask one time, I said, well, how do you know if it's a biochemical imbalance? There's like 23 neurotransmitters or something like that in the brain. How do you know which ones are out of balance and by how much? And the psychiatrist responded, oh, we just leave that to the drug companies. They tell us what drugs to use for what imbalance. You know, and I'm like, what? You know, what? You know, it's like that's letting the fox loose in the hen house. You know, so they have no baseline. They don't know what's out of balance. They don't know by how much, and they don't have any objective tests to measure what's out of balance. Where that came from was a drug company by the name of Eli Lilly, who put out Prozac back in the 70s. They made it up.
Gosh.
They said, oh, yeah, we got to come up with some reason why our antidepressants work. And they go, well, you know, it does something to the serotonin, so it's got to be a chemical brain imbalance. And they pushed it, even though they knew it was a lie. They went with it anyway. So the psychiatric mafia and Big Pharma picked up on it, and they pushed it. They pushed it into the universities, and now that's what they're teaching thousands of psychologists and psychiatrists, that this is a biochemical brain imbalance. And it's a total lie.